Do you ever feel nostalgia for things that you once indulged in so easily, yet found yourself drifting away as they went in a direction that didn't appeal to you? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. Real-time strategy games were super popular in the early 2000s, and thanks to the freebies offered by magazines, I got to play quite a few. But with time, the classic style of base-building gameplay started falling out of favor, and as a result, so did my interest. Sure, every once in a while I boot up the old favorites for a bit. Things like Age of Empires, Warcraft, and least known by far, Warlords Battlecry and its sequel, two freebies that left a lasting impression. Developed by Aussie company Strategic Studies Group, Warlords Battlecry is a 2000 spin-off from the Warlords series, which were instead turn-based strategy games, where you chose one of several factions and set out to conquer the world of Etheria. No, I'm not covering this. I'm a human being. At a glance, Battlecry is a bog-standard RTS, and at least in this initial outing, somewhat restrained by its limited scope. But by bringing elements from its parent series, the Battlecry trilogy sought to separate itself from the crowd with a simple idea: persistent, long-term character progression. You create your own hero to roleplay as, with the specialty you choose, the abilities you choose, and in the campaign, the path you choose. Later comparisons to the much more popular Warcraft 3 were inevitable, as well as those to the Spellforce franchise. But personally, I see them as different points in a spectrum between RTS and RPG. Warlords Battlecry takes place in the Isle of Dawn, located between continents and split into Duskside on the left and Dawnside on the right. It's morality coded for your convenience. You play as the fresh new guy in the island's human settlement, and Commander Peridian gives you your first assignment. Together with the veteran Minos and the scout Robert, your mission is to clear a small infestation of undead. Once you've sufficiently killed the dead, you're informed of a priest who brought a warning about the two lights that were seen flying through the sky, as well as the prophecy that accompanies them. With the guidance of Elana, the elf child from the intro, you're sent to find someone who can make sense of it. The prophecy talks about the two tiers of dawn: Navarre, the giver of life, and Luciferus, the bringer of death. They hold powers too dangerous for mortal hands and must be destroyed. The catch is that if mankind was to be the one to destroy them, then everyone would die forever. While the plots and twists aren't going to win awards, I appreciate how the campaign tries to maintain a bit of nuance when it splits into light and dark paths in Chapter 3, after Peridian uses Elana as bait for a horde of undead and laughs like the cartoon villain that he is. After discovering her corpse, your hero realizes that his own values are fundamentally incompatible with those of his superiors, and has to make a decision. But light doesn't mean good, and darkness doesn't mean evil. They are two sides of the same coin, much like how both paths put you in the same conflicts, but from opposite perspectives. In the light path, Robert immediately defects, but your hero still follows Peridian's orders, because that's the best way to find Navarre so that he can make things right. It's the pragmatic choice, something that the mission design itself reinforces during maps that disallow you from building a base. These are nearly impossible without visiting certain locations and relying on mercenaries from all walks of life. I mean, maybe they're just for gameplay reasons, but it sounds cooler this way, okay? By using the tier's power, Elana is brought back to life. but you're quickly deprived of your rank and exiled from the human side, forcing you to chase after Lucifer's by yourself. Ultimately, Ilana dies regardless, but her sacrifice ends the conflict without destroying the rest of the world. In the Dark Path, you and Robert defect from the human side in search of Lucifer's. Although you lead the orcs and the undead, which are depicted as evil, your objective is to bring justice upon men like Peridian. But power corrupts, and therein lies the difference. Robert tries to warn your hero that mingling with the orcs and undead might not be the best of ideas. However, Grunt the Giant keeps brushing Robert off, presumably influencing your thoughts. I say presumably because your hero is never directly involved in conversations, and that's where the storytelling falls apart. Your hero narrates, but never converses. Bob just got skewered, my guy, say something! Point is, your journey on the Dark Path was doomed to fail from the start, and the title of Chapter 4 makes your downfall apparent. Vengeance, not justice. And as is shown in the end, the prophecy is true. If you shatter the two tiers, the world is devastated. By chasing the tier that brings death, Ilana is never brought to life, and by the time you find Navarre, you're too far gone. The world is ruined, no matter how just your intentions once were. Realistically, I'm reading too deeply into what is a cautionary tale about power and revenge leading people down a self-destructive path. It's not an epic tale about a paladin who earns a cool sword and a horse, nor was it ever going to have the same polish and production values. Still has the genre's standard voice lines for unit selection and orders though, and I love how they range from being played straight to being absolute cheese, something that the developers doubled down on in the sequel.
Surrender, fools! Into the abyss! I am invincible!
You hear that? That's what the kids call aura farming. It's one of those details that turn a bitmap with numbers attached into something memorable, something with presence and weight in the game world. Or alternatively, it's what adds a sprinkle of humor into a crapsack world, like the undead and the orcs do by being silly goobers.
Ta-da!
So much death!
I'm here, I think. Dum-da-dum-dum,
That said, the campaign is best played with a walkthrough on hand due to the element of trial and error present in certain missions. 4% instant kill chance doesn't care about your pro gamer skills. Hope you have enough archers for those 500 harpies. It's a game where half the battle is knowing what it's going to throw at you and what resources the game gives you, like the free units you get from approaching certain buildings. There's also minor gripes like not knowing whether the next mission allows base building, or if it's restricted so you have to back up to the menu and restart because you spent retinue points on a builder unit like an idiot. At a glance, Warlords Battlecry is your standard fare of base building RTS. You gather resources, control your little guys, and tell them to build stuff so you can grow an army to overthrow your opponents. By converting the mines scattered around the map, you fill your reserves of gold, ore, stone, and crystal. Each race uses different amounts of each resource, but their purpose is universal. They're needed to construct buildings, train units, and research various upgrades, both for combat and economy. Maps are typically obscured at the start of a battle, so there's also a component of exploration. Mines are the obvious points of interest, but Battlecry's RPG elements make themselves relevant here as well. Mausoleums give you a quest and a time limit to complete it, ranging from donating X resources to killing Y enemies or destroying Z buildings. Your effort is rewarded with things such as a powerful unit or equipment for your hero, because that's where the real spice is. Heroes are more than just a juiced up unit, doing a bit of everything. They build, they convert, they cast spells, they empower your other units simply by being nearby. They are commanders, fighters, magicians, and everything in between. And most importantly, they grow stronger the more you play. Progression in Battlecry is persistent throughout battles, and it allows the player to fine-tune the approach they take when playing. Obviously, each race has different tools at their disposal, but that doesn't mean that you have to play them the same way as your opponent. One player might focus on raw strength, turning their hero into a melee powerhouse that shreds through enemies like nothing. Another might focus on spellcasting, nuking groups of enemies or keeping allies alive, while another might focus on map control and resource gathering. During the campaign, you can only play as a human hero, but otherwise you can create one from the game's 9 races. This determines which of the 4 professions are available to you, and along with your chosen specialty determines your base stats and what special abilities you can learn. From there, each level up grants you ability points to spend however you want. You can buy those abilities, or spend them on your base stats, which in turn combine into your base skill levels that you can also increase directly. Combat, health, speed, and resistance are straightforward skills that improve your hero's performance in kerfuffles, but command, morale, and conversion can be just as important. Command increases your command radius, inside of which you can convert buildings and passively boost your troops' power. The higher your morale, the stronger the boost granted to units inside your radius, and the higher your conversion, the faster you can convert buildings. Yes, convert buildings, not just mines. Playing a hero with a big and thick command radius is prime griefing material, because conversion works on regular buildings too. Look at the size of that thing! Not only does this prevent your opponent from producing units or researching upgrades, but if the race you're commanding shares that building, you can immediately put it to work. Magery boosts your maximum mana and increases your success rate at casting spells, of which there are too many to count. Beyond the basic 3 that every hero can cast, you have your usual sort of offensive and support spells, and even schools like alchemy that can create equipment out of nothing. Finally, the merchant and training skills focus on strengthening your economy and making your units more powerful. The former makes everything cheaper, while the latter grants new units a bit of experience. Because individual units also grow through a simple leveling system, improving their abilities. This is further extended by the retinue system, which lets you keep your strongest surviving units. They are granted unique names and can then be deployed again by spending a limited number of retinue points. This mechanic is also neat because it builds a player-driven narrative around your gameplay choices. Kingdoms aren't built by one person, nor are wars decided by a single soldier, so the game makes sure you don't forget the weight of every poor decision by immortalizing them in the graveyard. Losing a veteran unit isn't just losing a unit you can produce again. It's the loss of a companion you've been counting on for a long time. Life snuffed from a momentary misjudgment. Heroes certainly aren't invincible either, and any side that loses their own is going to be severely handicapped. Your units lose their command bonuses, and although each race has a general that can convert buildings, they do not have the same range and speed. This is also where that trifecta of games come into the picture. Warcraft 3 heroes are as vital to gameplay as Battlecries are, but they are not long-term extensions of the player's identity. Their roles and overall skill set aren't customizable, and their growth is locked to the campaign's duration or to a skirmish that can be over in less than half an hour. Spellforce takes the opposite approach, sticking to role-playing first and strategy second. The way it controls, the presentation of dialogue, and the way missions play out has more in common with classic RPGs than they do with your average RTS game. Battlecry is the middle ground, where heroes can be commanders, warriors, wizards, merchants, and everything in between. They can be as directly involved in combat as you want them to be, but the gameplay still restricts itself to its foundational RTS framework. Both elements complement each other in equal measure. With all that stuff in mind, let's take a gander at what each race has to offer, starting with humans, the jacks of all trades. Their heroes can pick any profession, and have a rounded roster of units that aren't exceptionally strong at a base level, but become fierce opposition against the right targets. Squires can be upgraded with flaming arrows that set enemies on fire, while knights go from average to pretty damn powerful with the double damage upgrade, and can even deal triple damage against undead units. Humans also have access to a trio of mages as their general, the white mage being of particular usefulness thanks to his healing magic. Seriously, certain campaign missions are miserable without one. The undead are mediocre at melee combat, but proficient with magic and are unique amongst all races due to their evolution mechanics. They can build gravestones for very cheap, and these produce the skeleton, a weak but very spammable unit that can instantly evolve into more powerful units. By spending crystal and ore, skeletons grow through a branching path, restoring their HP and granting more combat prowess or access to ranged magic attacks. Much like the human equivalent, Slayer Knights also serve as a direct counter, learning an upgrade that deals triple damage against them. Dwarves are bulky but slow, making them suboptimal for map exploration and hit-and-run tactics. Their roster of units doesn't look intimidating either, but they pick up the pace with late-game upgrades like Dwarven Brew, which temporarily boosts their speed and combat effectiveness. Dwarves specialize in machinery, having access to multiple siege units that demolish buildings. They're not limited to the standard watchtowers either, having access to a weaker but much cheaper alternative. Barbarians and Minotaurs share a number of units and buildings, but grow into different strategies. Individually, barbarian units are rather weak, but they are quick to produce and have upgrades to speed it further, incentivizing spam tactics. Riders are also very fast, and the few range upgrades help them keep control of the map and chase down enemies trying to escape. Minotaurs have a limited selection of units, focusing on strength over quantity. Their general, the Minotaur King, ignores armor and is nearly as powerful as the almighty dragon that all races have access to, while the Coral can produce sheep that their units consume to heal themselves. Of note is the Minotaur. Yes, that's what they're called. Barbarians can also produce them, but only Minotaurs can make full use of Minotaurs through a series of powerful upgrades. Star of Sartek can switch individual Minotaurs from melee to ranged, although this is unfortunately permanent. Orcs are ugly and all around stupid, but also quite versatile. Their infantry and cavalry are decently strong, while trolls and giants have powerful ranged attacks that are particularly effective against buildings. Although they don't have any exceptionally strong upgrades, some orc units can inflict enemies with poison or disease, continuously damaging or crippling their power over time. Finally, we have the elfin races, comprised of holier-than-thous, edgelords, and hippies. Despite their different alignments, gameplay-wise they share many similarities. They are very fragile, they rely heavily on crystal, and several of their units have identical roles. All three utilize the Wisp as their builder unit, which can't be sent to mines to speed up resource production like other builders can. Instead, 4 Wisps can combine into an Ancient Wisp, which passively produces crystal. Elves also have access to the Phoenix, an annoying little bugger that can convert buildings. The key differences come from what each race specializes in. High Elves counterbalance their fragility with a high combat stat, granting them superior accuracy and avoidance. Their Dragon Knight is also one of the few ground melee units that can hit flying enemies, and its upgrades make it effective against dragons. Wood Elves are terrible at melee, but excel at archery. Glade Wardens become immensely effective with a full set of upgrades, and Wood Elves are the only race with access to sprites, which fly and benefit from the same upgrades. Dark Elves can train skeletons, but they don't have access to the evolved forms that the undead have. However, they are the only race that can train assassins, whose attacks have a 4% chance to outright kill any unit, including heroes. This can be increased to 10%. Perfectly balanced, bro. They can also sacrifice units to attempt to summon a powerful daemon, which is otherwise only found through quests. This starts with a minuscule 2% chance of success, but the more you sacrifice, the higher the chances. Conveniently, they're one of the races with access to Slave Master, allowing them to instantly summon 10 thralls for some gold, which lets them increase mine production speeds. As I mentioned at the start, there's overlap between races, the same buildings, the same units and upgrades, etc. This does play into conversion, letting the player use an opponent's buildings rather than merely denying their usage. But it does make certain units feel a bit pointless when you're not leading the intended race, like the skeletons for Dark Elves and the Minotaurs for not Minotaurs, and some races feel incomplete compared to others that clearly had the most work put into them. All of this is something that the sequel majorly addressed, adding unique visuals, voice lines, and padding out each race's roster with brand new units and utility to make them more distinct from one another. Besides that, I just have a minor gripe with unit micromanagement. The game has the standard unit groups, shortcuts, queuing up actions, etc., and the pathfinding rarely has issues. What I have a bone to pick with is how it deals with units that have different movement speeds. By default, the game slows everyone down to the group's slowest unit, so that they all march together. You can set this to have every unit always move as fast as possible, but you can also hold down control to do it. The annoying part is that holding down control does not work with attack orders, whether it be right-clicking enemies or targeting the ground and having them automatically select targets. They will just head towards the target at the slowest speed. I also wish that the range at which units react was less limited. It's not uncommon to see some units finish destroying something and then just sitting their ass, while the rest of the group a few meters away is already busy smacking another building or unit. If anything I said interests you, know that the games are readily available on digital platforms. Mostly. All Battlecry games are on GOG, while only 3 is on Steam and Ubisoft Connect only has 1 and 2, presumably due to some rights issue, since those were published by Ubisoft in some regions. As for playing them on modern Windows, I've had mixed results over the years. But if Battlecry 1 and 2 don't start, throw D-Draw Compat at them and it should work, aside from some small visual artifacts. Sadly, they have no amenities like widescreen support. All you can do is configure D-Draw Compat to more gracefully scale the games up to your screen's native resolution. Battlecry 3 does have a widescreen patch at least. Then there's the Protectors of Etheria, a mod that dedicated fans have been developing for over a decade. If you own Battlecry 3 on Steam, you can easily install it from there. While you can take it as a remaster of sorts, since it also includes recreations of Battlecry 1 and 2's campaigns, it comes with all the new stuff and reworked mechanics from the mod, which doesn't always mesh very well with the old maps. The user experience isn't the greatest either, but if you want an updated Battlecry, this is where you'll find it. Though personally, I'd stick to the original games. Due to its iterative nature, there isn't much from a mechanics standpoint that makes Battlecry 1 worth picking over its sequel. The more freeform nature of its campaign also lends itself better to building your own unique legacy, letting you start out as any race and conquering the rest of the world to unlock different perks. In Battlecry 1, you can only play as a human hero during the campaign, and which race you lead depends entirely on the mission. Hope you weren't relying too much on those knights. I guess my point is that, if you don't particularly care about a story, then don't feel bad for starting with 2, since it builds on where the first game stumbled the most. Still, although it has its flaws and is a bit finicky and frustrating sometimes, there's something to love here. It's an RTS game that attempts to inject the player's own style into a genre that seldom allows for it. It's frequently on sale for pennies too, so you don't lose much by giving it a try at the very least. And although I've been detached from the genre for a long time, realizing that I can still dump hours into the right ones is reassuring. It's like I'm reconnecting with a part of myself that had been dormant, and it's all thanks to this underappreciated title from my younger years. That has to count for something.